Today, the Cannon Tower in the tower defense game that is the video game news industry. This is ChillPoint.
God, no.
I was like,
do we have a physical cannon tower that I can operate?
Never give my wife ammunition.
I was thinking about. I thought of that joke, and then I was like, but what tower would be correct?
Yeah.
And I was like, the ice tower was my first first thought. We just slow down the news.
Not like the arrow tower, which is a lot of like really.
But my thought with the cannon tower is it doesn't fire very often.
True.
You know, we're only firing once a week.
Yeah.
But we hit a wide range of stuff. There's a big blast radius.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
I will say, I don't particularly care for weapons that make me remain stationary.
Oh, okay.
However, I do like crossbows and bow and arrows, and that's very close to that. So I do like that aspect.
I mean... the arrow tower is like the first. Arrow tower is like the first tower you get, but then you like upgrade it and you get like longer range and faster shooting and stuff, right?
Yeah.
See, I prefer to have. I like having ranged weapons, which is why I like magic and arrows. Because then
arrows.
I'm out of range for things to hit me. This is literally why I picked the character I picked in the long game.
Makes sense.
In ranged attacks.
I
mean, I keep doing the thing where I keep going up to people, but you know, this is beside the point. I like having the option.
I keep the last tower defense game I played was Locke's Quest. Was that what it was called for the DS?
I don't know.
Oh, there was one that had like a tower defense segment, and it had like a building segment that you got to build for a bit and then do repairs. And you had like a defense segment where all the orcs would come in, and you have to like kill them all, and then we have another segment where you get to go back and repair stuff and upgrade things, and like kind of this back and forth thing. But it was also like you were controlling a single guy who could walk around and do all this stuff. It wasn't that you had to click stuff on the screen; you actually had to tell him to go build things.
Right.
Yeah.
I think. What was it called? Ninja something? It wasn't like Mini Ninjas. That's a different DS game. But there was like a tower defense style game on the DS that featured ninjas.
It's from the Ninja Town series or something.
Yeah, it was Ninja Town.
Yeah.
Which is basically just based off of plushies.
Yeah.
That was a lot of fun. Because you had construction ninjas, which is just like a ninja with a construction hat, and you would like worker ninjas, and they had ties and cell phones and like briefcases.
Were they in high vis?
Yeah.
Yeah, good. Yeah, high vis ninjas.
I feel like the central the central theme of ninjas might have gotten lost somewhere along the way. Anyway,
where are we, Paul?
Hey,
what
everybody.
are we doing?
Welcome to ChillPoint, the show where we talk about video game news and also some other stuff. What's the tower and tower? Is there a tower and tower defense that just fires things randomly in all directions?
Isn't that just Vampire Survivors?
Yeah, maybe that's it. Yeah.
Vampire Survivors, the portable tower defense game.
Yeah. And there's no
By
lanes.
Which I mean,
or
you're
anything.
the portable tower.
Yeah, you're just shooting things.
Yeah. Reverse bullet hell.
Hey everybody, this is a show where we talk about video game news, and we also talk about the episode of ChillPoint that went up yesterday. So to start with, though, I mean, I guess we do this. We give more info about stuff that happened in the episode of ChillPoint, as well as stories that didn't make it into the episode. But we have to also talk about, for this episode of ChillPoint, there were a couple of corrections, I guess, that need to be made.
Clarifications.
That were just, it was a combination, and from what I understand, there's, in particular, there's the story about the Final Fantasy 7 or Final Fantasy 14 raid people, and I think Graham was saying that they got all their stuff taken, which turned out to not be true. They actually I believe they did not actually get banned, or maybe one person
The
got
person
banned.
who did the mod, I think, is the one that got banned.
But they
Potentially.
and they had the gear that they got from the raid.
Yeah, all the gear and the achievements from that specific raid were
got
removed.
Yeah, got removed, but all their other stuff was allowed to be kept. From what I understand, from some people in the comments and some other stuff, because what was being reported is what Graham talked about, but that was from apparently most people were sourcing things from like a single tweet that was like in Japanese and
Yeah.
just kind of like a paraphrasing of what happened. It wasn't supposed to be.
And this
like
happens really a lot where if news breaks in a different language and it gets translated, because there is some deciphering within translation of like trying to understand intent of a language you don't know.
Like they got their
can
gear
get some
taken.
stuff, yeah.
They got their gear taken versus they got the raid gear taken is kind of a subtle distinction, especially in the context of a tweet that has been translated. So it's like
and then
already
again,
summarizing
that
it.
filter of paraphrasing and pulling the story down into a tighter focus as it goes through each and every outlet or person has that effect.
But yeah, I mean, we can talk about that. Might as well talk about that story first. That was about the so there's the latest Final Fantasy 14 raid people were doing, and they were as everyone or as people often do in MMOs when a new raid comes out, various raid groups were racing to see who would get the stuff first. And sometimes there's even, I don't know if this was the case in this one, but there's often like achievements for the first person or the first group to crack a raid on a particular server. They'll get an achievement or get a special thing.
Yeah.
And so they're competing for that. And this particular raid was proving to be more difficult than some of the other Final Fantasy. Like this is, from what I understand, generally considered to be like the hardest raid they've ever released.
All right.
So it was like normally the high-end raid groups will down a new raid in like 2 or 3 days, and this one was like a week.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And then it turned out that they had been using mods, which obviously there's some gray area there in terms of like what's an okay mod to use, what's a quality of life mod, but the mod that was being used was fairly clearly a mod that actually was changing the playing of the game in the sense that it allowed you to zoom way out to like see the entire battlefield all at once, which you weren't really supposed to be able to do.
Yeah.
And completely change. And now, from what I understand, only one person was using that mod, but of course they were then coordinating with everybody else to send information around.
Yeah. So even if the rest of them weren't even aware that mod was in existence, they were gaining the benefit of information they were not supposed to have in the original design.
That would be kind of cool, though, if Final Fantasy XIV was like, okay, so what if we did design a raid that could make use of a raid commander? That you put one person who's like, they walk onto the field and they can't do much, but they can have a look at everything and direct what's going on.
Well, I mean, obviously, yeah, because I mean, in any battle type situation, logistics and command oversight is very important.
Yeah.
So, and you can imagine if there's like, I don't know what this is actual raid was like, but if there's some big guy running around, somebody being able to track where he is, or what's going on, or where he's
incoming attacks,
where it's about to attack, or whatever, and tell people to move around. So yeah, obviously it's not cool. And got an official response from Yoshi P, the developer behind, or the lead. I don't know what he was. He's not
called the director.
The director, I guess. Yeah, I was going to say not lead developer because that would imply that he's actually the one like building the game himself.
Fingers to code. Yeah,
he's the director of it, and I feel like somewhat uniquely among, say, high-profile sort of video game directors.
Yeah.
Is not only extremely well respected by the
Fan base?
fan base
Yeah.
and by the players, but also like well respected and well liked, and people really feel and
By his colleagues.
by
specifically.
and
Yeah.
also and the players really feel like he cares a lot about the product.
Yes.
Which I think is something that is neat to see. Often
We have
often they'll be like, whatever, this guy is, the main person behind, like, say, Destiny or something, and be like, bah, he can't do anything right, blah,
Yeah.
blah, blah, blah. Oh, of course, Gabe Newell's going to mess up Half-Life for us again or whatever,
I realize that I have all this knowledge of. Well, I don't want to say auteurs, right? But the video game celebrity, like the dev celebrities.
Yeah.
Right? That it's like I know more about, like, I have more names in my head for people like Hideo Kojima, Yoko Taro, Shigeru Miyamoto, and as Eiji Aonuma, like that, like we start to get down a little bit. Hidetaro Miyazaki from Software. Like the fact that I'm getting to know more and more of these names over time is when I'm not really looking into it that much, but like the more names I get to know over time, the more that is telling me that it's like we have this interest in the lead person who does a thing, and it's like it's like saying like Steven Spielberg, right?
Yeah, it's like the
that
director
kind
of a
attitude.
movie.
Yeah.
Obviously, there are tons and tons of people involved in making a video game or making a movie or whatever. But I think there's something to be said for, the ostensibly the person who is sort of the buck stops here
Yeah.
vision of what it should look like.
And that we also have an idea of what their personality is like based on how they approach the game, because the way we're talking about Yoshi P is different than the way we talk about Sakurai.
Right.
It's like whenever we talk about Sakurai, we always talk about this guy who is burning a hole in his stomach because he's like, I'm working so hard at trying to get this goddamn game finished,
But, like-
and I need to have a break. And we just kind of put that on his shoulders, despite that might not be the truth. Because you watch his YouTube channel, it's like he seems very relaxed now.
But
Yeah.
but I think there is a real there's a lot of, especially recently, there's been a lot of pushback against this sort of auteur theory of filmmaking of video games or whatever, right?
Yeah.
This idea, and it's this idea that like whoever is responsible for everything, and you can't make whatever without this person, and to some extent that is true, that it's like obviously huge. Lots of people are involved in stuff. But if Suda51 is making a game, that has a certain connotation in your
Yeah.
mind, right?
That makes me think about this is what this game is probably
And it's
going to
not
be
so
like.
much that I know how Suda51 codes,
No.
but I know the kind of game that Suda51 or
Wants to make. Yeah.
And the one kind of thing that he would be pushing.
Yeah.
So that that does have an impact.
Yeah. And then we walk away with that, like it's like Peter Molyneux, right? We walk away with this idea that, Peter Molyneux made this amazing game called Populous with a bunch of other people. And then from that, there's this extrapolation that's like, Peter Molyneux comes out and talks a lot about the games that he's making, and they don't ever deliver on what it is that he wants or what he says that it's going to be doing. But it gets more and more ridiculous as time has gone on, to the point where it's like, that whole idea is a laughing stock, right? It's kind of like you hear Peter Molyneux's working on a game and everyone just has a really good giggle about it because they're like, oh, what's it going to do for us?
I think like I said, I don't think there's any issue with pointing out, hey, this person directs this game and therefore they get to make the last minute decisions or whatnot. We have that within our own company, right?
Yeah.
We have you and Graham and certain people who kind of make specific design choices. But that doesn't mean other people don't contribute ideas or
Certainly
get things
not,
in there.
yeah.
But I think there's this. I think the reason there's this like we don't want to talk about those people so much anymore is there's also the group of people who kind of get pushed forward as these are the face of this thing, and you're promoting kind of like this hero worship when it's, the commander also still had an army.
Yeah.
Right?
Certainly,
sure,
yeah.
the pharaohs are really impressive, but let's not forget who actually built the pyramids.
Yeah.
Yeah, certainly.
Yeah. But when you ask somebody
but-
for comment, you go to the pharaoh, and the pharaoh's the one who tells you what's going on.
And the as a consumer, when you're evaluating whether you want to spend money or spend time on a game, you're trying to find, you're looking at reviews or you're looking wherever. If for instance, say Hideo Kojima made the game,
Yeah.
I know that has certain connotations to it.
Yeah.
And even though he didn't physically make the game himself,
Yeah.
that does
Play with your expectations.
yeah, that does give me a certain set of expectations
Yeah.
that when I go into a game that's a Hideo Kojima game, I have a certain idea of what that will look like. And he has made those, he's no longer working for Konami.
Which means that it's like when that happened, we had that idea of Kojima's whole thing is gonna be like, wow, they're gonna take the brakes off because it's like it's his company now, it's his group, he's the one at the top of the whole thing. He's gonna make this exactly how he wants to make it, which means that it could go anywhere because Konami people can't be like, oh, we have to rein him in. That's the narrative we build for ourselves.
Well,
whether that's true or not.
I mean, there was also a lot of stuff that came out about Konami around that time too.
Fair.
It's
very
true.
incredibly awful.
I think what's interesting too, though, is that also with like a game that's a live services game, like an ongoing game, like Final Fantasy XIV, Yoshi P sitting at the top of it, being like, that's something that you have a player base that is consistently interacting with your product over the course of years, and they're doing it once a day, and they're staying like, I'm playing Luigi's Mansion 3 right now. When I'm done playing Luigi's Mansion 3, I will not be going back to continue playing Luigi's Mansion 3. So whoever it is that has made that game within Nintendo, I'm not going to start developing this kind of like year-long parasocial relationship based on things that I hear about press releases for whatever involving this person, because that is a game that has been delivered, it is done, and now I am done playing it and I move on. But when it comes to something like Final Fantasy XIV or World of Warcraft or any other kind of MMO situation or like Overwatch, an ongoing game, we start to build these connections outside the game because we're like, we want more of the game, we want more of the idea of the game, we want to interact more in different ways.
It also has to do with how that company wants you to perceive things. Is why we see Phil Spencer take the stage a lot of the time. It's why we saw Reggie take the stage a lot of the time. It's like there's specific people they use in PR, and oddly, some of those people don't actually make anything.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's a deliberate choice by different things. Like, of course, like Nintendo, other than, Miyamoto.
Yeah.
Like you were saying, you were playing Luigi's Mansion.
I have no idea who made that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's there's a deliberate choice by Nintendo to
Obfuscate it.
basically white label everything as being from Nintendo.
Yeah, Zelda's the only other thing where we have a view into it, and it's Eiji Aonuma. And it's the only other name that I really know about who is like a director level person or producer level person at Nintendo. I don't even know the name of the person who made Animal Crossing New Horizons, and I've seen KK Slider's credit sequence in New Horizons dozens of times, and I could not tell you her name. I could not tell you the name of the person who made.
Not reading credits then.
Yeah, well, that's looking and seeing them go by, but not internalizing who that is.
Okay,
but there, I mean, the difference of somebody being in the credits versus somebody being sort of
a face.
We read a lot of headlines,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
We don't necessarily read all of the articles associated with those headlines, but we read a lot of headlines. Every time a headline has somebody that's actually big in the title, they use their name.
It's true.
Every time there's someone they don't think the audience might recognize, but they want them to click on that thing, they write things like former Nintendo staff.
There's that too. Yeah. Oh, it's like the woman
because it gives it more weight than it really has.
I can't remember her name, but if I saw it again, I remember. But the woman who came out to talk about Ghostwire Tokyo, Is that the name of that game? She came out.
She's so cute.
She was so great because she was just like she was such a breath of like a different air on stage when she came out to do that presentation that everyone was like, wow, we're used to everybody being like X and she's completely different, and now we love her. We want to protect this woman who wants to make this amazing game, apparently. And then she moved on to do something else, and I'm like, I know this name.
Yeah, I know
I
the
can't
face, and I
remember
always
it. I know
forget the
the
name.
face, and I know the whatever, and I'm like,
And you do see.
and if I saw her name get published more and more often, then I would
Yeah,
start to associate that.
That's
right?
what I mean. It's like this weird like
I couldn't
the
even
famous
have
get
a-
more famous. Their
chat
name
there.
Thank you.
their name is constantly like being published in headlines, so you see it repetitively, so your brain literally starts firing neurons of like, you know who that is.
Yeah.
And it's, and you see especially the way, the video game industry in particular, not only, there's these sort of constant sort of splits and merges of companies.
Yeah.
And, people will, and new companies that like people will leave and create my favorite, I always remember Patrice Desolé, who was the, one of the main people behind the Assassin's Creed games originally, was working for Ubisoft Montreal. Didn't like the conditions,
Oh, okay.
left, started his own company, which Ubisoft bought, and suddenly he was back at Ubisoft again.
The deal was so good, but shit. I guess if you have control of your own studio.
Yeah, I think maybe he didn't. He actually just left and went to a different. It wasn't his own studio, so he didn't have the decision about them getting bought.
Fair. Yeah.
So he just wait, help. Anyway, so yeah, this idea of mods. I like somebody in the comments had a great metaphor. They're saying Yoshi P is like the dad who's like, hey kids, don't sneak out after dark, after curfew.
Right.
Right.
But if the kids sneak out after curfew and are going to hang out or watch Stargaze
they're
or
doing very
or having
yeah.
or just chill
yeah.
or whatever, it's not a big deal.
He knows. He actually knows that they're sneaking out and
Yeah.
stargazing,
But it's all cool.
It's fine. But he also then finds out the ones who are
Smoking weed.
smoking.
But then some
and-
kids are going out
Yeah.
and breaking windows or spray
doing-
painting walls and stuff, and he's like, now we have to crack down.
Yeah, because I told you not to sneak out, and then some of you went out and did that, and I can't acknowledge the ones who just went out to to go stealth mow an old man's lawn or some shit like that.
And it's
Those of you who are doing good, I got to punish you too.
Yeah, so hopefully, and there's currently no reason to think that this will result in a crackdown on mods. But that is something that could happen if this kind of thing is considered to be an issue, and it would be unfortunate.
I wonder.
I also want to be like, because it's like, oh, our Final Fantasy dad is disappointed in us, and we don't like that, and whatever, and he's expressed these emotions, and I'm like, yeah, because sometimes when you hear things for the first time, that's what you express. In a couple of months, he might feel a little bit differently, especially if it's not repetitively happening.
Yeah. You use a
But-
push mower, by the way. Anyway.
Just, because it's just like, oh, someone did something that goes against the thing that I tried to design. Yeah, I'm disappointed by that. Why would I want to make harder content?
But I also wonder if because as people point out in chat, it's like he plays the game. I wonder if he also goes looking at mods and tries stuff out.
And so, there's also the idea that there's some things that mods, some sort of quality of life things that mods put in that the developers haven't put in the game either because lack of time or they didn't think of it or whatever.
A level of complexity that's
Right.
kind of like we don't want to end up breaking something else.
But there's also things that mods put in the game sometimes that the developers deliberately didn't put in.
Yes.
Right. You know, I know there's lots of games with like, you know, with like maps and stuff, right? You know, there'll be like there's mods for like Elden Ring to like put objective markers and stuff.
Yeah.
Right, which is one of those things that I mean was somewhat controversial with Elden Ring, that there wasn't those.
Yeah, I mean, some of those things are deliberate design choices that's the reason why they don't have them in the game.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
some of those are just like, oh, maybe that is a quality of life improvement that would actually suit the design intention of our game.
Right.
That we hadn't gotten around to because look at how massive the game is.
So yeah, we don't like this idea of you know, people made a mod to do this and the developers actually don't want people to be doing that is different than, you know, whatever, something that tracks the amount of XP you're gaining or whatever.
There's Breath of the Wild mods out there. Is there one that takes out the weapon degrading?
Oh, probably.
Probably.
Almost certainly.
But I mean, the trick with Breath of the Wild mods is they only would work like in an emulator.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely. But
It's
I
wouldn't
kind
be a
of
part
I
of the-
kind of wonder if like
I'm sure there is one.
if you turn that on, if it wrecks, like how much that wrecks things.
I mean, you can just you just keep looking for better and better weapons, and then you just like throw out all the ones you don't need. And eventually, you've got like a dozen of the same kind of thing.
To me, like that's almost the equivalent of like, you know, infinite money mod or something.
Yeah.
Anyway, in other Final Fantasy news, January 31st was Final Fantasy VII Day.
Yeah.
In a very official capacity. It was this by the Japanese, what was it called?
The Japan Anniversary Association, as we
Yes.
would call it in English.
The Japan Anniversary Association. And I feel like there is, like, people were likening this to, like, you know, naming stars companies, which I think there's, like, a little bit more legitimacy to
I
this
would agree.
than, like, a star naming company.
Yeah, but it's about as much legitimacy as, like, the Guinness Book of World Records.
Right,
Yeah.
right. You know, it's basically you can have whatever you want. It's not a particularly auspicious award. Lots of people in the comments offering to donate to allow Loading Ready Run to get.
If you did, I would just find a better way to use that money.
Yeah, there's better. Okay, one, there's better ways to use that money. Two, it's very probable that you have to be a Japanese company for it to work.
Yeah, it's very likely. It's very likely that we wouldn't be able to for regional reasons.
Yeah.
But yeah, also there's even for a goof, there's better things
I'll
to
tell
spend
you what,
money
though.
on.
If anyone wants to give me that amount of money, I will make you a certificate.
Yeah.
It's true.
Like $1,500.
We have a color printer and everything.
$1,500
I'll even use the office
US
resources.
is like, that's 1 month's rent for people here living in town. For most people living here in town, it's like I would rather just try to find a way to distribute that to everyone around here. We can all just raise a glass and drink to the anniversary of. It's our 20th anniversary, by the way. This year is building up to our 20th
true,
anniversary.
yeah.
So
There's also some people in the comments being like, "No, that can't be,"
yeah.
because
Oh,
that
no,
means
time
that
has
I'm
moved
20 years
forward.
older than I was when I started
You know
watching
what?
Yeah.
Loading Ready Run.
You should be happy that you have lived this entire 20 years. I mean, it's got, let's be honest, the world's gotten kind of real, like, a hard place to live currently, but the fact that you're still making it, that's really good. So good on you for sticking it out. But this is like all you are doing, because especially things like we defined a day to celebrate grilled rice vermicelli, like that idea, and I'm like, right, the whole point of this is just to say we want to, as a company or as a small town or as a group that does whatever, we want a way to commemorate something for forever. And how do we do that? Well, if we all agree to pay this guy's like, you can pay me some money, and what I'll do is I'll have it on an official register that people can look at, and then that way we can all be happy about this. And the first 10 people who came along were like, "Nah, ain't no way that's gonna work." It's like, it's 1,500 yen. And he's like, "Yeah, okay, we'll do it." And then it's like, "Oh, now it's 15,000 yen. Okay, yeah, we'll do it."
It's
well, now it's
like-
150,000 yen. It's like,
it's a cheap way of doing PR.
Yeah.
It's hey, did you know it's Rice Krispies Day? Man, I should go get some Rice Krispies squares.
Because the
That's
alternate,
all it is.
Your alternate idea is you have to finance an anime that talks about the thing that you make. Like these are the two extremes.
That would be a much better use of our money.
Yeah.
But it's true that like any people can, especially, I mean, you don't even need to be a
business.
you don't need to
really.
be like a civic organization, but certainly civic organizations all the time can just declare a day.
Yeah.
Or I know there's that thing like in the House of in the House of Commons. They recognize people, which I believe Desert Bus has gotten at least once.
In BC legislature, we were recognized for the contributions we were making towards like raising money to help sick kids, essentially, and which was very nice. The local MLA came out and came to the event, and then he also said, "I'll present a thing in legislature for everybody." Yeah.
So it's I mean there's a website that Graham and I used to have used a couple times back in the day for various Loading Ready Run videos called holidayinsights.com.
Yeah.
That just is like, you can click on any day and it'll say like all the days. It's like, this is pumpkin pie day and whatever day. And it's
Every
always
day should
like,
be pumpkin pie
so
day.
it's like, what kind of authority is this on? It turns out you don't need any authority to make that happen.
But being Japan, you would definitely, somebody created an authority and then told everybody I'm the authority, and everyone went, yeah, you know what, you're right.
But it's equivalent of like hiring a wedding planner. Essentially, or trying to be like, I want to do a ribbon cutting ceremony. Who can set that up for me? Right? It's to do something fun,
ceremonial,
that also promotes attention.
Yeah, I found it kind of interesting that, at least, and it's obviously it's difficult to search for stuff on the Japanese internet, obviously for us because it's hard to read.
Yes.
But there didn't seem to be like a bunch of other companies doing the same shtick. Like, not that this company has like some sort of like political mandate to do this.
No.
But it seems to have, in the same way as I guess Guinness Book of World Records, it seems to have sort of become the de facto standard.
Yeah. You establish an authority, and then by means of establishing your own authority, you say, well, now I'm the authority. And other people are like, right, why would I want to compete with that? It's $1,500. I just want you to say that this is the anniversary the day that somebody bought life insurance. Why would I go to another guy?
Does the Japan Anniversary Association, are they the ones who promoted Pokemon Day or Mario Day?
Now I wonder.
I'm pretty sure Nintendo and the Pokemon Company just said, we've declared these are the days. I don't think they actually paid anybody because they didn't have to.
No.
Yeah. I mean, there's always, and they always talk about that thing with like, when the new Dragon Warrior games come out, that it's basically a national holiday in Japan.
Exactly. Yes.
'Cause not officially, but just nobody comes to work.
Yeah, it's de facto. Yeah.
We have days like that at Lurk.
God, I just think that it's great that despite all of the promotion that Square does around Final Fantasy and all the things for that, the enduring idea of Dragon Quest Day being a national
Dragon Warrior, Dragon Quest,
but still, but it's the same game, right? But when Dragon Quest comes out, everybody takes the day off, and I'm like, Dragon Quest can't have anywhere near the sales that Final Fantasy does, but that sticks in your imagination way more, I think.
And that might be like an apocryphal thing.
Because it's old, right?
Us in North America sort of get, but maybe that's not true.
We saw that happen once, and so it's just become the narrative, yeah.
I think it's just Dragon Warrior might be a little more popular in Japan than you think.
Yeah?
Just because Final Fantasy is super popular here and still pretty popular over there doesn't mean that
I have to assume that Final Fantasy is like going to have the same level of popularity just about everywhere you go.
But maybe
feels pretty universal.
But like, even if more people overall are playing Final Fantasy, maybe not as many people have to play it the day it comes out.
That may be true too.
Yeah.
Whereas Dragon Quest fans are irresponsible.
I think they're very responsible if they are all agreeing that they should take the day off of work.
Look, DQ.
That's just responsibility.
DQ is like if they were playing it at work, that would be irresponsible.
Yeah, that's the irresponsible
while
thing.
operating heavy
but
machinery.
everyone being like, hey, guess what? We all know this game is coming. Let's just not work that day. That's very responsible.
That would be awesome to have like a little sticker on the side of the big thing that has like, the picture of like the hand kind of in the gears being like caution, like picture of hand, and then like picture of the hero from Dragon Quest being like with like a big X through it, being like,
or just a slime.
No playing hero, no playing Dragon Quest.
So is Japan Anniversary Association, like, I like this idea that somebody said, I'm going to do this thing, like set up a registry and do that kind of thing. And in a way, I think that like the idea, even though it is a PR entity, I think it has a sort of legitimacy because when a lot of companies or civic organizations or whoever decide that we're going to interact with this thing to kind of like, the bigger something gets, the more it seems to have weight.
Right.
So it feels like an authority because it's the same way that we gave Guinness authority over world records, that we've kind of just been like, they're the only ones who want to do this, so we'll let them do this. And then everyone stopped paying attention, and it's like, now you're giving out records that people can just pay for, and they sound like bullshit. And it's
we honestly do not care. Nobody else cares enough about world records.
Yeah. I just wanted to know who the world's tallest man was and who the world's shortest man was, and then see what happens when they fight ultimately. But it's like, that's all I want to know. I just want to know a couple things.
I think like Ripley's Believe It or Not might be the competitor.
Yeah. But whenever I think of Ripley's, I always think of like, they always go for like oddities, right? They're kind of like they're like the sideshow. It's like, oh, we want to, like, the things you're not supposed to look at, the things you go into like a tent at the circus because they're exploiting people. Like that's how that feels. And Guinness doesn't have that feeling. It just feels like it's like, oh yeah, well, who scored the most goals at the in a hockey game ever? And
with their foot.
I mean,
yeah.
Honestly, Ripley's only makes me ever think of ice cream. It's the only time I ever hear the
Maple
word Ripple.
Ripley's.
I was thinking, we saw that they had basically an ad for Final Fantasy VII Remake as part of the description of the thing, which
it's not trying to hide that it's an ad.
No.
Right. Which, but what that means is that clearly you can write your own text for that.
Yes,
right?
Absolutely.
If they had, what would have made them like the absolute kings in my mind would be is if it was like on this day, January 31st, 20 years ago, Final Fantasy VII was released. And it was, and followed on many other Final Fantasy games, including Final Fantasy XIV, which is currently available as you can go from levels 1 to like just
free to level 60.
Immediately go into the full Final Fantasy XIV
like
copy pasta.
Yeah.
God damn.
Oh, that would have been good.
And like that's like enshrined as the official description of that day.
It's weird because over here I hear of something like, if you told me there was something like the Japan Anniversary Association in Canada, I'd be like, well, that's a scam. Like that's the first thing I would think of is like, that's a scam. But for some reason I'm like, 2,000 companies have all decided to establish stuff. It's ridiculous, but it's a bit of fun, isn't it? Is how I think about it over in Japan. But over here I'd be like, that's somebody trying to scam my ass.
Well, I mean, PR is a kind of scam.
In a way, yeah. It has its uses, definitely.
Speaking of things that might be a scam or might have its use, E3.
Oh, E3.
That's a really good segue, actually. Wow, that does make me think.
And how nobody is coming to E3.
Now, I think I might have exaggerated slightly.
You think?
I mean, you say in the story you're exaggerating.
There was a comment that talked about how you rant about articles being
a little misleading in the headline.
And then our episode title was No
one
One Goes to E3.
Yeah.
I want to point out I'm the one who names the episodes most of the time, so it's not his fault. But he ranted about it, and I still did it.
Now, I think I may be incorrect about this, but I think that on the last E3, which was 2019.
Well, physical.
The
The last
last
physical.
physical.
The last
Normal.
physical
Let's-
E3.
let's-
Yes, sorry.
Yeah.
The last physical E3 in 2019, where this would have been an issue, because some people were saying that like Nintendo had already dropped out at that point.
Yeah, no, they hadn't.
and thing, but so even at that point, I know we were talking, and I think we probably did stories on ChillPoint about that companies weren't doing the big presentations anymore.
Yeah.
But most of these companies would still have a presence on the show floor.
Yeah, you have a demo booth. You have live presentation.
They just don't actually do their big. They do their big actual reveal stuff like a couple days before E3 is what sort of started happening.
And I can understand that to a lot of people, if you don't do a keynote presentation at E3, then you're just not there. Because I think a lot of people only interact with E3 through the keynote presentations that are given. And so, because it's like...
You could say the majority of people actually
if I'm not
only
going to be on the
interact that way.
floor, then I don't... If I'm not going to be on the floor, then I might not even be interested in watching the live Treehouse segments that Nintendo is doing, despite the fact that they're there. So if they only have a direct that's not at E3, then it's like, well, it feels like they're not at E3.
And the distinction between a big presentation in a theater at E3 and a big presentation in a theater near E3 is not necessarily that clear to people watching at home. You know, if you're just watching the stream of it.
But I will tell
E3
you,
really cares.
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely they do, because
They
one of
rented a
those
lot of space,
people is
yeah.
not paying them money.
Yeah.
But I will tell you, the discussion of who is actually at E3, whether or not you count as being at E3 because you have a keynote versus you have a show floor presence versus you happen to be in a building that's beside the event, is one of the most pedantic conversations I always come across on the internet.
Because there starts being, because I think a lot of these conventions, and I think E3 got into this as well,
Right.
where things will happen with like another company will like rent out the place like across the street,
Yes.
and kind of have their like alternate programming E3.
Yeah, like Devolver actually, I think, has done that every single time, where they've been like, they go to the E3 location, but they don't go to the hotel. They go to like another spot, and they're like, we're going to still have our presentation. We're still going to do our keynote live to an audience.
So do they not normally actually go on the show floor at E3?
I don't. They might
don't
have something at the show
think
floor, but I don't think
so.
they ever do a keynote in the venue. I think they
Right.
do it
I
outside.
think part of their joke is usually that they're not actually at E3, but they are. Or
Right.
yeah, they're
something
still
like that.
doing an E3 thing.
I don't,
they'll be
I
in,
don't
like, the
always
parking
catch
lot.
their,
Yeah.
I don't
That's
always
good.
catch their videos.
But Wicker Guide points out, though, E3 presence to feel more like an actual trade expo, enthusiasts are upset. E3 was never for the public.
Originally,
right?
yeah.
Yeah, it was meant to be like journalists descend upon the in a physical sense, right? Journalists descend upon this place. Other people in the industry descend upon this place. Everybody gets to see what everybody else is making. Journalists then review stuff, hopefully report on it, let everybody know. Acting as more, the media acting as a gatekeeper to what it is we get to hear about coming out of these events. A lot like Comdex, a lot like like a CES, like that kind of
I would
idea.
say maybe like a mirror rather than a gatekeeper.
Well, but they are, right? It's like if you don't have somebody in the media talk about your thing may well not exist to people, to lay people in around the world. If nobody has actually gotten news out about your thing, you have to work that much harder to talk about your thing in the world. So you try to make something flashy so that journalists will be interested, so that they'll pay attention, so they'll want to write about something. Game journalists are generally very hungry for content, so they would develop more of that stuff, right? You're going to hear more about the big keynote stuff because there's lots of stuff to talk about.
And it's, I think if E3 was happy to be in that space, there wouldn't be as much of a thing, right? But they've always been, or not always, but at least for
Like a decade?
a decade, they've been trying to they keep, sort of going back and forth between how open and how industry they want to be.
They really
Yeah.
want the
They-
public to
and they-
come in, but then they see how terrible it makes it.
I want to
Turns out the public sucks.
Yeah.
I want to point out as well, though, it's not just journalists who would have gone to this thing.
It was industry
because it was
people.
industry. So you would have had people who ran GameStop or other stores and stuff go to those shows, because at that, especially early on, that time period, that was how they learned about product that they would be selling.
Yeah.
That's even sometimes where they would even order product.
Yeah. I mean, that's and the whole idea of a trade expo was to be like, this is only for people who are involved in the trade of the thing. It's business to business.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just want to point that out because we constantly focus on the journalists, because that's the aspect that allows us to see what happened at the event in the first place.
Yeah. And companies definitely want, anybody developing a product of some sort wants the media to know about the things that they're making, because they're like, that's free press.
Yeah.
You know, so it's somebody saying, I will show up and write about that and you don't have to pay me to be there. And so they do that. So the sense of like, well, Xbox and Sony and Nintendo, this is the crux of the whole story, by the way. Xbox and Sony and Nintendo are reportedly, according to multiple sources, but not the companies themselves yet, will not have any sort of physical presence at this year's E3.
Yeah.
They won't have a booth and they won't be doing a keynote. They'll be doing their own side presentations, their own direct type stuff, state of play, whatever you want to call it. There's showcases.
There's no
around when E3 might be happening.
Maybe.
Yeah.
I don't want to say that they're going to, because we don't know that.
I guess that's fair, but it would not make sense for them to ignore it outright.
But Nintendo has.
Well, they've done theirs like either like a week before or a week after, haven't they? Like they've really kind of structured this to be like...
Last year they did it like at the very end of the month, and it was like a partner presentation or something.
Oh, that's fair, yeah.
Like there's a difference between being like, oh, we're definitely going to make sure it's the week of, which that's what their digital presentation was. People like to say, oh, Nintendo doesn't do their keynote at E3, and that's true, but they specifically did it about the time of E3 and had it advertised by E3 as well. Like, so, you know, there's that, but the whole point, the reason people get excited about E3 is like, you know, that's the point of time in which all of these places will do their presentations.
Yeah.
But if they don't have to, they might move it to a different month. They might move it early in the month, but that's still not E3.
Yeah.
If they don't see the...
And if they don't feel like they have anything to really promote at that time, they don't have to do one at all, which is why I don't like saying, oh, they'll definitely do one around E3 regardless, because we've thought that for the last couple of years, and that hasn't always been true.
That's true.
Yeah, it's so, and I mean, I think it is indicative that E3 put out a statement in response to this thing from IGN, being that like there's going to be lots of great stuff, and we're planning all sorts of cool things for this year and also in 2024 and things, notably not saying that they will be there.
Yep.
So, yeah. So, but the actual companies haven't confirmed it, and E3 hasn't
commented.
Well, E3 hasn't said that IGN is wrong.
Yeah,
it's too early. Generally, it's beginning of February. I think March, April is generally when we used to hear from companies being like, oh yeah, we're definitely going to be at E3 this year or whatever.
I mean,
so I think like the beginning of February, well, they're probably talking to people or doing whatever. It might be too early for them to actually start their own PR cycle of here's who's going to be at our event.
Yeah.
And yeah. I mean, it used to be not even like, it wouldn't have even been like talked about, because it would have been just assumed that they would be there. Yeah. Right.
And there are other places to go experience as a public person. You can go to PAX. You can pick a PAX, you can go to a PAX, and you can play video games. You can be a member of the public, and you can go to a conference like that. I'm not saying everyone must go to PAX. I'm saying everyone must go to a convention. That if you're a public, go find a convention in your area that's actually promoting video games for the public. But having something that is just for the press is actually a valuable thing. I mean, even PAX has a thing where it's like we have a whole section where we don't welcome the public to this.
It's like the first hour of the day.
Yeah, it's
no. I mean the PAX Dev, which is like,
is that a press thing?
I
thought that was just devs.
It's devs, but it's a trade show aspect to PAX, right? It's like we have a time when we don't let the public come to this, and that's all I mean. Is I don't mean not the media. Like maybe they shut the media out too, but it's like we definitely do not welcome public people to these several days. This is the dev time to be doing.
I mean, I know that. I just don't. I'm not.
But I'm unfamiliar with how it works because I'm not part
so
of dev, right? So I have no idea how that's supposed to work. So,
But
Yeah.
A lot of comments you'll typically see, besides the pedantic conversation that I talked about, is that I thought E3 was dead years ago, and it's like, for some people it is.
Yeah.
They've had a lot of different problems with information leaks and other stuff. The ESA is also kind of like its own weird pile of garbage in a lot of ways. But it's still been happening, with the exception of like I think was it gone for 2 years during
yeah, I
the
think
pandemic?
the last two. Well, no, it was. No, I
It
think
got canceled in 2020 because I mean it kind of had to be.
I think they've been,
And then I think 2021 it didn't happen, but 2022 it did.
or it sort of happened.
Well, an online version
Yeah,
happened,
that
but like
didn't-
an event that called itself E3
Yep.
occurred.
Yeah.
That was not great
Yeah.
Yeah.
for a lot of reasons. This is like their return to trying to do a physical event. So, and it's getting taken over from its planning by ReedPop, who does organize the PAX events and a couple of other
events, yeah.
gaming events and things.
They do Gen Con as well, don't they?
Yeah, and
Yeah.
they do the ones in Berlin and whatnot as well, and in London.
But E3 has always been kind of like, as you've said, this thing where it's like it started as a trade show, and then at some point keynotes were being broadcast online, and of course we still had the stories about people who like, I write a random blog and now I can go to E3 and I'm amazing.
Yeah.
And then they opened it up to the public. I think they turned it off from the public one year in there and then turned it back on, like something like that. And it's the question, of course, is like, why are they letting the public come in if it was just a trade show? A trade show is usually sustainable on its own because they make enough money to make the trade show happen.
Yeah.
But
I
that
mean,
sounds a lot like,
But it's like not,
we could make
answer.
more money.
and it's also like it's not as sexy as a thing. Like it's not as like, it doesn't have the same cachet in as like.
I scammed my way into this conference by writing a blog.
Or no. In terms of like being well known in the industry as opposed to being the place for video games in
Yes.
North America.
Yeah.
Right. Which they were at one point.
Yes. Agreed.
And they're not probably anymore. But and there's also a big difference in terms of like how it's marketed and how it's set up. Like an industry conference, entrance to an industry trade show might be like $500, $1,000
Yes.
or something, because it'll be paid for by the company and it's part of the business thing. Whereas obviously something like PAX, it's not that
It's less than that. Yeah.
You're bringing in a whole different market.
Yeah, I think there's sorry, do you have something?
No,
because this is, I think, like PAX rolled in because largely Jerry and Mike were like, we would rather have a conference we could go to that we knew that it was for us.
Well, E3,
That we,
I
we're
believe,
allowed to be there.
I believe the year PAX came in, E3 had actually completely collapsed, and
Yeah.
then they brought it back.
Yeah, and that idea of like, why don't we have a conference where we can go play video games, where we can feel like we're actually allowed to be here, where we can participate, that kind of notion. I'm sure there's whole paragraphs have been written. There's things they've said in their rants and screeds and whatnot where they've talked about like, this is the reasons and all that kind of stuff. But I'm saying ultimately this was, we want to make a gamer-focused conference. We don't want to make a media-focused conference or a business-focused conference. We want things for the people who actually go out and buy a video game at retail and go home and they play it. And when E3 was reasserting itself and being like, well, we can be that as well. It's like, well, that's such a wide net to cast. And to be like, well, maybe we need to shrink that or we need to do something different with that. And to have Jeff Keighley come along and be like, hey, I'm going to hold Summer Game Fest because I'm mad at this whole E3 thing where they don't seem to know how to do any of their shit. And we were like, yeah, we feel the same way. A lot of us feel the same way. And I'm like, that in itself isn't also an interesting thing where it's like more people saying, I want to make a thing for the gamer because I like to play video games too, and I want to make a thing for the gamers, and I want to like have that involved, and be an ego trip or not, it's still a thing that you want to do. And the ESA running E3, it's like, yeah, guys, at this point you could fold it back into being an industry only event. There's enough of the other events out there doing their thing. You could charge $1,500 a ticket to get in. You could require media credentials from a major media company. You could do all these things to restrict it and make it feel smaller. And maybe it would be more successful in that regard. You'd have to ask the people who are going to the event if that's what they want, and then be like, don't think about the public. The public has lots of ways to get involved with this stuff from now on.
But I think they see PAX and they get jealous of that.
Yeah.
Of that level of sort of fame or that number of people and stuff. And so they're like, hey, we could get in that too.
Yeah, why couldn't we have 70,000 people show up? And I'm like, have you...
Because it changes the dynamic of your event.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
something different.
That's why you don't want to do
and not
that.
understanding that.
And like, honestly, I don't want to go to E3. I've listened to people talk about how they go to E3 like as part of like the industry and the things they do and how much fun they have. But when I listen to them have those conversations, I'm like, oh yeah, it's like when I go to PAX, it's really great. I get to see a bunch of friends. I ignore most of the conference, and then I get to see a couple cool video games. But like, all I really want out of E3 as a consumer is
news.
3 specific days that I know there's going to be streaming where I get to see everything at once. Not Summer Games Fest, which the first year they did had everything spread out and I couldn't figure out when anything was. And not what E3 is now, where it's like, well, nothing happens.
I know we have to move on, but there is something to be said for quality and exclusivity. That the idea of... only 10 people can eat at this restaurant a day because we only have 10 meals that we've made, or something like French Laundry kind of idea, right? And there is a certain... I've never eaten the French Laundry. Is it in San Francisco? I don't know where it is. The fact that I know about the French Laundry, though, speaks to a certain form of exclusivity and the cachet that comes with having that. And people used to fight about trying to get an E3 press badge because the only way they could get in to see stuff be made. I think less of that might happen now because now you can just go to PAX.
I've eaten at a laundromat.
Okay, that's kind of... Well, that's the thing.
Was it
That's
French?
E3.
I mean, the guy was yelling at me with a Quebecois accent, so maybe,
so close enough.
E3 as a industry event versus PAX as a public event is like eating at the French Laundry versus eating at a laundromat. That's really the difference here, is that on the one hand, the exclusivity means that it's like I might be getting a rarefied experience, something that I can actually think about and talk about later to other people. And versus like, I went to this laundromat and had an amazing time because all my friends were there because we can all afford to get in and eat. And we did our laundry.
Like, I don't know if that's the right...
It's not a great analogy.
Because it's like, it's not that that E3 is $1,500 or, the industry conferences cost this much money because they're like super fancy and exclusive. In fact, they're often like less produced than a consumer convention. They're that because of the stuff that you get access to and all that kind of thing. So it's like the analogy of like you pay all this money to get like the super primo thing is not quite the same. It's actually like a different...
In terms of what you're consuming as a person who gets into there, right? If I have a badge to go to E3, I know I'm not waiting in line. I know I have chances to talk to the devs. I know like a lot of chances to talk to devs. I know that I'm probably being taken care of as a media personality, that they're like, we have a place for you to go and sit and actually write your stuff. Like all these things might be getting set up for you at E3 as being, or if you're in the industry, like if you're part of GameStop or whatever else, it's like I get to meet with other people. I get to talk to like luminaries in the industry more. I get to maybe attend some conferences where they talk about what their future plans are. Like that kind of stuff might be happening more and more in a case like that. And that's where I mean, there is a difference in how you consume the product.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'll stop talking.
I think in a couple of months we'll know for certain if who's actually going to E3 and whether or not we should care. I'm gonna guess
we're not going. By the way,
we're not. We're definitely not going. We probably
if they invited
won't.
us, it would be kind of interesting, but probably not.
I would go if we were invited.
Yeah, if passes showed up in the mail, I'd be like, I guess
they were like, we need industry pros like ChillPoint.
But it's not an event I really care about going at. Especially given that I feel like in this day and age I can learn all the things I want to learn faster from the internet than from walking around a conference filled with people who have their grimy hands on a bunch of video games that I don't care if I play right away.
Yeah.
Be like, if I go to E3, will I find out about Silk Song? That is the only question that needs to be answered.
I was so mad that I could not go to PAX Australia the year they were showing off Silk Song there. You have no idea, Paul.
Yeah.
Also, what if they invited ChillPoint to attend and not Checkpoint? Well, then I would wave it in Graham's face.
Hey,
Because
look
I'm
who's
that
going.
kind of person. I don't know why, but I do it.
All right. Well,
What's our next story?
speaking of another thing that Beige won't be allowed in, Mario Kart Bowser Challenge.
Yeah. Yeah. Jesus.
That I mean, there isn't a whole lot to this story. This is just apparently, and there's been some sort of hedging on this now.
Oh, yeah.
in response.
Because it's not about your band if your waistline is 40 inches. It's saying if your waistline is 40 inches, you might have some trouble fitting into the cart.
Apparently, they're going to have there's like a test seat there.
Yeah. You might find it uncomfortable.
But I mean, I know, and there's been stuff even before this piece of information came out. There was a bunch of the people who got early access to it to promote it. We're talking about how it's like the smallest ride they've ever been on.
Yeah.
So
And I had said the other day, that maybe they had calculated this based on, it's because they looked at this is going to be a ride for Japanese people, and they have smaller body size than a lot of American people, so we're building it for this, right? But then Heather pointed out, it's like they might have considered it a children's ride.
and I mean that could be.
Maybe.
That could also be the case, which I think is an interesting
Design is usually
idea.
done for a specific, with intent.
And I'm like, I don't know if you don't go through the whole process of that without.
And the articles I read said that this was for safety regulations.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So there's your intention.
We hadn't heard about weight limits, but we're hearing about a size limit, and that's, I think, interesting
Well, that's
too.
because that's going to have to do with
For
seatbelts.
the seatbelts, yeah.
Yeah.
I do like that. This is a Mario Kart ride, and canonically in the Mario Kart games, the like heavyweight characters, your Donkey Kong, your Wario, your Bowser, the way they are actually like
Just hanging ass outside
yeah,
of the.
they're
Yeah.
like those guys, at the parade on like the little teeny motorcycles.
the Shiners.
they're giant. They're just like covering the entire thing, right?
Yeah, they're
so,
not. They
like-
don't fit in those carts either.
Yeah, so that's what they're emulating.
Yeah. I think it's as likely as the thing that I'm thinking. It's almost as likely as I think, Heather, your idea of it's like the children's roller coaster idea. I think that's almost a more likely thing that happened, is that they got talking about who's the intended audience. It's like, well, it's Super Nintendo World, and that's a thing that kids do and teenagers do. So it's like that's who's going to be riding this thing.
What-
And it's like, yeah,
It's a possibility.
Maybe.
I mean,
we don't know.
it was something I threw out there.
I'd love to
I do-
ask
I
the
do wanna
ride
point
manufacturer.
out that it's Toadstool Cafe.
Yes, it's not Cafe Mario, because that's the cafe that's at Nintendo of America. Toadstool Cafe is the cafe they have at Super Nintendo World.
Yes.
The cupcakes
I-
still
I
suck
want
ass.
to also point out that I don't read any of these stories about this place because I don't intend to go. It's just I listen
Yeah.
to podcasts and they have to talk about it.
I'm hoping that they add, like at the maybe at the end of like one of the carts for the ride, they just like attach an extra like wagon on the back. And it's like, if you can't fit in the car,
Yeah.
you're sitting here like facing backwards.
If they redesigned this,
you just get like pulled along.
if they redesigned Bowser's Challenge for Double Dash support, then I'd be all over that.
Whoa.
Yeah, have two smaller chairs in the front and a larger chair in the back, so you, as a parent, you can ride.
And
the
like
back.
have like LEDs so you can get blue sparks.
Yeah.
Don't you wear some sort of like VR helmet when you're on this ride?
It's like a
So,
VR thing. Yeah.
Like you definitely you can't just have like somebody standing on the back of the cart.
No, you'd have to have them sit down, but it's just like one chair in the back of the cart, like they do for Double Dash, yeah. And then you let them like swing around to the front and kick somebody in the face.
Have they done like 2-player local co-op VR type games? Like, is that? I guess that's something you could probably work off of one cart.
Yeah, because
That-
you would know where everybody else is, yeah.
Yeah, I'd be mostly concerned with, like, I feel like in its current iteration anyway, most VR setups would be in danger of punching each other in the face.
Also, I don't think it's full VR. I think it's AR.
Is it AR?
I thought
Yeah.
it was an AR situation.
Yeah, it is. Like,
Yeah.
it's there. You put the glasses on and it like projects
Things in
Right.
front of you
things
as you're
into
doing
your
it.
vision. Yeah. And you can like throw shells and stuff.
Yeah.
All right, so we have a Deno coil situation. is what
Somebody
you're
in
saying.
chat had said that they had read somewhere. I hadn't seen an article or anything show up, but maybe we'll go look for this later. They had read somewhere that the thing itself, the cart itself, the seats are based on a standard harness from Universal Studios. So that might actually be the reason why they're doing that. But if that was the case, that would mean that there would be warnings for anybody who's over 40 inches going to ride anything at Universal Studios.
Well,
and I've never heard of that ever
That
before.
also might be that might be a thing that is actually just a thing, but nobody ever talked about it on the video game sites because there's no video game ride yet.
Yeah. But I've seen a lot of other...
It could be, yeah. One of those things that is like a standard thing for this type of ride. And
Could be.
Yeah. Anyway.
They're not. I don't believe they're open quite yet, or maybe they are for for the U.S. location. So I assume
I think there's
we should be
February 17th or something.
Yeah,
They're
so we
open to
should
the
be
public.
seeing the people who get to go and check these things out on location should be having videos and stuff hit soon. So we'll actually really get to see that stuff eventually.
Boop, 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 boop. All right, and then
Presuming they're allowed to actually film or talk about it.
and then the last story, or for the coming up, another leak in the War Thunder.
We don't really need to talk about that.
As a
again, do we?
corollary, I mean, that,
it's another. I believe this one was like I
a
believe
non-existent plane.
a non-existent plane.
Apparently-
how do you leak a non-existent?
I know.
plane?
Apparently, there are what I'd heard was documents for a plane that was supposed to go into production that never got produced, but were still that's technically secret documents because they're for things that could be produced. That's what got leaked, and I'm like, I don't know what the hell's going on anymore.
We need. Graham was talking about various tower defense games, and people were making recommendations.
That's good.
And what I want the the forums for a tower defense game. Somebody leaks out. It's like, no. This is not how balloons would operate in this situation. I have these balloon plans.
Somebody puts up like that's not how people would shoot arrows from towers. I have these plans from the 1500s for how you would actually make a tower to shoot arrows from.
Yeah.
It's like those turn out to be like French national secrets. It's like
No. It turns out that you're uncovering time travelers that way.
oh yeah. I've invented the English longbow. You've done what?
All right, let's talk about a couple of stories that didn't make it into the episode. Not too many here, but
Yeah. Oh, the corollary to the War Thunder leak is apparently somebody the YouTube video went up. I haven't watched it yet about how apparently Minecraft mods were leaking nuclear secrets. So there's that. Shit's happening in every video game now. So
No, I mean Minecraft always has to take on. It's part of it's the problem when you have a sandbox game like that.
Yeah.
Is everyone takes things from other video games and makes it in theirs too.
yeah. All right. Let's.
So, Sports Story,
Yeah, exciting.
which is a game that people were really stoked about. From what I understand, it was a little disappointing
Yes.
when it came out.
It came out in the middle
People
of
really
December.
people were really big on Golf Story.
And that's why they were excited for Sports Story, because they were expecting it'll be like Golf Story, but other sports.
Yeah.
And it had a lot of bugs and problems when it came out, to the point where people were very unhappy with it, and it seems like they crunched to try to make it get out at that point.
So, last week, people found there's a Easter egg room that you can get to through a bunch of different convoluted way, where
Yeah.
you sort of go outside the map, and you can get to this secret Easter egg dev room, where you go in and you can talk to all these developers. We are the developers of the game Golf. We are currently on an enforced break. Our new game is coming out any day now. You said that a year ago. You might say we're experiencing troubled development. So there's some seriously passive aggressive, leaning towards aggressive stuff being put in here. So this was last week. This was discovered and sort of put around, and the developer, the or publisher or whatever, was like, that's not great. So we're going to release a so they released a patch to remove it. Sort of.
Because you can't actually remove it.
Yeah, it turns
apparently
out
it breaks the game.
Yeah, it turns out to be that
I'm not really sure how to remove it.
Yeah, it turns out that the way the game is designed, it was a lot harder to remove than they thought it would be. And so instead of removing it, they just changed the dialogue in a way that kind of makes it worse. So they changed the dialogue. Remember what they were saying? Not only ahead of schedule, but also setting records in employee satisfaction. Our staff
We are well fed.
Well fed, well rested, and
like
productivity skyrocketing.
It's gone from people complaining to people looking like they're in a hostage situation and have guns pointed at their heads.
Yep.
Yeah, very
Which I think I think they may have gone a little too far in the other direction.
Now the scuttlebutt.
I assumed that this was a joke when I saw the video because I was like, ha ha. But apparently that is actually what's in there.
So the scuttlebutt is that the people who made the original game, Golf Story, when they were like, well, we'll make Sports Story. A lot of the stuff that you're seeing in the commentary relates to things like that, where it was like, it was a very small team of people who made Golf Story, and it's like, we're going to make Sports Story, and it'll be amazing. And whoever took over that company was like, well, we can do more and more things, and we'll add more and more features to things, and things are getting bigger and out of control, and we're having changes made to the writing, and we're having like all these other things happen. So everything you see in there is related to problems that happened during production, and given the fact that when the game came out, it's had kind of a disappointing release. There's been bugs and there's been other things with it. There is this assumption that what we're seeing is the dev team has a lot of complaints about the way that other people have assumed control over the development of this game.
Well, and I'm going to assume that they had to make their deadline because I believe Sports Story was the 5th game in the Nintendo Advent Calendar video series they were doing about indie titles, and it was like a shadow drop.
Yeah. And so to have a dev room where people are complaining, to be like, maybe nobody will ever find this, I hope somebody finds this, or I'll have to show somebody how to find this so they can publicize it later, or whatever. But then to have them say, well, we have to take it out of the game. Well, we can't do that. Oh, well, we'll have to change all the dialogue. And I'm like, the dialogue is so passive aggressive that I'm like, I'm sure that it gives you the sense that an edict came down from on high and says, you're making us look like idiots. Change all this dialogue now. And somebody's like, oh, you bet, sir. I'll make sure that it reflects the right thing. And they went in and they wrote all the new dialogue to be the way that it is. And it's like, you can't argue with any of that because, hey, at face value, it looks like these people are all really happy about what's going on. It's like, yeah.
It would have been better to maybe alter some of the dialogue to be maybe less passive aggressive, but maybe just more honest.
Yeah.
And or just, at that point, you can kind of be like, this is a problem in game dev, and this is stuff that happens.
Yeah.
But you can be a little less like, oh, it's a Stepford Wives situation all of a sudden.
Yeah.
Like I feel like you could just make it sort of inoffensive and generic, right? You could just be like, hey, I hope you like our game.
Yeah, we're making this game, and it's been pretty good. It's like, man, we worked really hard on this. We know there's a few bugs, but stick with us, like that kind of idea.
Yeah, you didn't have to go quite so far.
Once you start saying things like, everything we do is definitely on time.
Yep.
And we are definitely all very happy. Our happiness quotas are through the roof. But that's not wording anyone believes in.
I love the term malicious compliance comes up in chat. And I'm like, yeah, that's what this is. And
It could be, yeah.
I'm so happy to see that because it is definitely a hey, fuck you kind of attitude towards the people up top because it really feels like we were made to do this.
And recently, we had a story about Majora's Mask, about how that game ended up being done under crunch, which really isn't that surprising when you think about how long they took to make that game.
Yeah, it's
And
an asset flip.
Supposedly, there is like a lot of dialogue in there is based on the devs putting their complaints in the game to get through the thing, not because they want to necessarily complain directly to someone, but it's a thing you do, right? They're venting in the game.
Yeah.
So you have lines like "I see you've like I hope I can get this done on time."
Yeah.
Are supposedly part of that. And
I mean, especially given the fact that the game revolves around the same 3 days, and you only have so much time to get anything done.
I see you've been befelled by a terrible fate.
I mean, you can tell that Majora's Mask had a big crunch on it because there's only 3 days in the game.
Mm-hmm.
There was supposed to be 5, and then
like we can only give you 3.
We'll have to just loop the 3 over and over again. Nobody will notice.
I do think it's funny that people complain about asset flips, and I'm like, Majora's Mask is one of the most beloved games in the series. Like, there are people who love Legend of Zelda games who are like, Majora's Mask is so good. I can't entirely quantify why it's my favorite or my second favorite or whatever, but it's so good. And it's like, yeah.
I have to tell you this. There's like that thing. I watched a Did You Know Gaming video, and one of the things they wrote was like the moon was supposed to have no face on it, but the guy like who designed it drew like a coworker's face on it, and then they changed it to this other more like this other terrifying face. And I'm just like, there's nothing funnier to me than I made fun of my coworker on a thing. I guess I have to take that out before we put it out.
Yep.
I think like a sequel using a lot of the same assets as the previous game that's not an asset.
You should never think of that as an asset flip.
Like I haven't heard that called an asset flip. Like that's not an asset flip.
No, but it's
an
funny
asset flip would be using somebody else's assets.
Yeah, and
that's the flip part.
Doing what you're gonna just taking what somebody else has made and doing
putting
this.
them out. Yeah. That's using somebody else. That's the flip part. But anyway. Valiant Hearts Coming Home. The sequel to Valiant Hearts The Great War, which is from 2014. And I know that this is it's not a game I've played personally, but from what I understand, there was a lot of excitement for a new Valiant Hearts game. That Valiant Hearts has a very excited fan base. That fan base was slightly diminished by the fact that they just announced Valiant Hearts Coming Home, which is going to be an iOS. It's going to be a mobile game that's exclusive to Netflix.
Oh,
so it's Netflix has been doing their developer thing,
right?
Which I'm sure is going to be super. Is definitely going to be the thing that turns around some people when they turn on that. We don't want you to share passwords anymore.
Right. Yeah.
I need to say, I have started a fire in chat just to poke I've just poked the hornet's nest is all I did. That's all that. No one has ever called Majora's Mask an asset flip. I did that on purpose just to piss people off just now.
I see.
Just want to be clear about that.
And I ignored Beach because I will hurt him later.
And Paul tried to tell you, no. That's not the case.
So you were like,
I'm intentionally trolling.
The people who do this stupid thing that nobody does are stupid.
Yeah. It's just
okay.
Just being
good job, Beach.
Just being a jackass.
That's why we have him on the show.
Yeah.
So anyway, Valiant Hearts is it. So as somebody who is not familiar with the Valiant Hearts games.
Yeah, I'm not either, really.
Previous games. I know they have a very dedicated fan base, and so this game takes place in World War One, and it's sort of I believe it's kind of a tactical RPG kind of thing, but it's this thing where it's got a very sort of cartoony style to it. Here, actually, I think I can unmute this, and hopefully it'll work in terms of sound.
Dear Freddy, we're on our way to France to help you.
It's got
win
this
the
very
war.
like
But don't worry,
cartoony
me and the boys
style.
are ready.
But it's actually like kind of hardcore. Like it's about the
Dear Brother James, do whatever
Yeah,
you
it's
can.
about the horrors of war.
the
but
horrors of
it's-
World War
madness.
One, tragedies.
Don't follow me here. There's nothing here but
apparently-
misery and death.
Caused a lot of the original caused a lot of tears, from what I can gather from comments. Which it reminds me. It's one of these things where like it looks like like a really very nicely done, but sort of a casual kind of game.
I think it's interesting too because it's
Yeah,
like,
I guess it's less of an RPG. I was thinking more of an RPG, but it's more of a puzzly type game.
Sure.
and people are going to die in this game.
It's
It's about war.
yeah.
Yeah.
I think that was
And-
the point.
Yeah. Or rather, you're going to get to know some people in this game, and they're going to end up dying.
The juxtaposition of the style and the content I find kind of interesting. That was my main takeaway from that.
I always really liked the look of it, but I never had a chance to play it.
Oh,
But now
well,
it's like,
I have a copy of it at home.
Yeah.
For the Switch, if you want.
yeah, I'd love to give it a shot.
Came as
It's
part of Child of Light.
interesting that Netflix has picked it up to say we're going to do a second run at it.
Yeah, well, I mean, who knows the actual history, like the actual development history?
Yeah.
But it appears to, it's not just that Netflix is like exclusive dealer on it. It's actually like was paid for largely
Yeah.
by Netflix.
Yeah,
so.
they tend to do that.
Well, because I mean, there's a bunch of games on Netflix that are like Spiritfarer and some other games that are not like Netflix exclusive
Yeah.
fancy games.
I'm
But-
very used to watching a series on Netflix where it'll be like a Netflix anime. And you're like, no, it isn't.
Netflix original.
Yeah, Netflix original
Which
comes up, and you're like, no, it isn't.
Which means you can't tell whether or not they actually funded it, made it, or what their actual association
Or decided
was.
to ruin it.
I mean, there's that.
Yeah.
Remember when Netflix used to save shows?
Yeah.
Speaking of new games that are coming out, this game is not actually related in any way to Netflix or to the Wednesday series on Netflix. It is, however, a game where you play a disembodied hand, and see if you can guess why I thought this would be something worthwhile to write a story about. Look very closely at that hand, how it walks around. Also, it's being attacked by feet.
Ah.
It's got a watch.
There are more joints in the fingers than there should be.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's almost like a spider.
God, it
Also,
seems...
like
it's-
I
This is-
applaud it for having a watch, but it doesn't need a watch. It can't read the time.
That's a
even
good
if
point.
even if it could, how would it? Like that would be like me putting my watch on my neck, like as a choker.
I mean, it depends on where you think its eyes are, I guess.
I suppose... Is this going to be one of these things where we find out later it's like we studied hands in their natural environment. We watched how they walk.
I think the opposite might be true on this.
Okay. Boy.
So this is by the people who did Moving Out.
Okay, that's cool.
I think this is one of those, and from one end, I think this is one of those games that they did a cool physics simulation, and they're like, "Hey, that could be fun."
yeah,
I'm
exactly.
Sorry, I need to call someone out in the chat, and I'm not going to call you out by name. I know it's fashion, that's why they're wearing a watch. But if it was truly fashion because it's a video game, they'd be wearing a hat.
So
They're wearing their watch in the right hand as well, which is very,
That just means
When-
they're left-handed.
yeah.
when I was a kid,
Maybe.
the other reason why, and I looked around. Unfortunately, I couldn't find it. It's lost to history. But when I was a kid, in grade 7,
You
my
were a
s-
kid in grade 7?
my school computer lab was a Mac lab.
Oh yeah.
Mac, like, this is like Mac Plus and Classic.
Yes.
Right? And HyperCard. And I was like super into HyperCard, which was, HyperCard was basically, I think it was supposed to be like a database tool, but what it was used for is that it had quite a cool natural language scripting system in it called HyperTalk that allowed you to do all sorts of stuff. And
Like
it
Myst.
was one of my Myst was made in HyperCard famously.
Yeah.
And you know it was one of my first sort of exposures to programming as a kid and stuff. And so I made lots of little Myst style games where you like clicked on things and moved around. I also at one point ambitiously started and didn't get anywhere with a game that I called Handyman, where you were a hand, and I did all the little like walk animations and stuff. A hand that was like this and like walked around,
Yeah.
like a kind of like a horse, I guess.
Yeah, it makes sense. Yeah, yeah.
Sure.
Walked around, and so I made like the walk animations of it walking along. I made like it could attack by like going like wham,
That's good.
Yeah,
like that.
I could see that.
and it could like jump and do stuff. And I made like one little level where it can like walk along a thing and jump. And
And
that was like all I made from it.
Did your animation for it just like it just went into a wham pose, or did it do like a little hop and then go?
I think it hopped.
Okay.
Like,
Just,
yeah.
Because I can kind of picture just like this little puff of like dirt being disturbed.
I didn't go that far, but it was. I mean, it's also HyperCard is black and white
Yeah.
and stuff too. Unless you do fancy stuff.
So
with it.
it's okay, Paul. I will fill in my brain a bunch of
Any-
things that you did not do. But
Anyway,
would be really
yeah.
cool.
I looked through. I have like an archive of some of my old stuff from high school.
Yeah.
Like some of my like old, just like essays and random stuff. And I was like, but I don't have. I did. It doesn't appear to have been saved anywhere, which made me sad. But so that's lost to the mists of time. But I saw that I was like, hey, that's so cool.
It reminded me more of the hands from Everything Everywhere All at Once.
Oh, it does look a little bit like the
You got
the hot dog hands. Yeah.
Those are the worst ones, though.
The hot dog fingers. Speaking of things that are squishy,
I do like squishy.
squishy things. What is it? Squishmallows?
Squishmallow.
Squishmallows?
Yeah.
The big, they're like...
Satisfyingly squishy.
They're sort of like stuffed animals, but they've got like a special stuff inside that it squeezes
Yeah.
in a different way.
Yeah, that doesn't feel quite like polyfill. It's like something just a little bit
It's
different.
like sand.
They've had...
Weirdly, yeah.
They've had Pokemon...
Like it isn't sand,
There's
but
more
it
spring to it.
feels like sand.
Yeah.
So there's been a few Pokemon Squishmallows out there, particularly ones of Pikachu and Gengar.
I mean,
Like this.
Gengar is perfect in any shape because of the type of Pokemon Gengar is.
Yeah. Pikachu, it's not quite right. He's just like a super fat Pikachu.
Like a,
He's like the original Fat Pikachu.
he's like a bean.
Chonkachu.
I do like that you can see that they've either embroidered or printed the limbs on them as well, so it's like you're not just getting a bean with a face.
He's sort of standing like this.
Yeah.
Anyway,
They don't feel like bags of sand though. They actually squish and they come back, but they're not like stiff like a lot of plushes
kinda like
are.
a foam.
Or they don't like have a fast spring back, like when you push them in and you bring them out.
yeah, it's almost like memory foam. Or
Yeah, it's
something.
weird.
It's almost like we should buy one for ChillPoint so that we can touch it.
So we
in front
can
of
demonstrate it.
People.
Yes.
So, as you
Anyway.
can probably see from the
I
headline
recommend
here,
a Gengar one.
there have previously been these, but they were pathetic.
Yeah.
10-inch ones. Mm-hmm. Useless. Because now, this is what they looked like. This is what the size of the old ones. These are the new 20-inch
You will
ones.
never hurt me or my son again.
Yeah.
They're 20 inches, but that's in basically they're 20 inches tall,
Yeah.
which means that their overall volume is like 4 times as big as the other ones.
Yeah, there's a tweet below this in the article that shows you exactly how big these things, because they're sitting on a couch, you're like, oh yeah, so they're big, pillows are big. That's a human head.
Wait, what? Really?
Like,
no,
that's-
that can't be right.
Yeah, that's a human head sitting behind them, and I'm like trying to peer through both of them, and I'm like, boy, that doesn't seem right somehow. Because
That's not that.
right? That's not 20 inches.
That's bigger than 20 inches.
Yes, I know, but it's here. Here she is sitting there with both of these things on either side. And I'm like, ain't no way. And it's like, no, that's what, if you're trying to cram your, like, that person's head, their head is resting on those, right? They're not pushing them into the camera. I think they're trying to get their head between them. And I'm like,
there's some weird perspective here.
It has to be.
Again, we need to investigate by getting some.
But apparently, because, I mean, that's why when they said, oh, these are absolutely massive, and I'm kind of like, when I saw that picture, I'm like, yeah, they would have to be absolutely massive.
Can I spend lure money for an investigation project?
They're only available at Target in the United States. Also, each one of those is $45 US, and I'm like, I don't get it. I mean, they're very simple in construction, right? Like,
Beach is no fun. You thought about a plaque that was way more expensive.
we have to get them from Target somehow, is the problem.
Like, that would be hard.
To ship that to Canada would cost probably 3 times as much as those things cost to buy.
Seattle has Targets, right? I'm gonna just take a ferry. Fund me a trip.
People are like, I'll ship it to you. It's like, I have places where we can get it shipped. So if you want to send one to mail time, go ahead. I'm not going to stop you. Coordinate with everybody else in the Discord or something if that's what you want to do at this point. Send Heather one. And the thing is, Squishmallows and Squishables are 2 different companies, if I've discovered, but they feel kind of the same thing. But there's just like tons and tons of Squishmallows at our local Save on Foods that you can buy.
Is this like a Lego and
Mega Bloks
kind of thing?
Maybe it is. I don't know if Squishmallows are actually like the better version or not, or Squishables are. I have been having my eye on a Squishable, a full size Rosy Maple Moth from Squishable, but I haven't been able to find one for like at a price I would be willing to pay for it.
Speaking of Lego, there's supposedly a rumor that there's going to be some Zelda Lego, and there's no, and I'm hoping that that's true.
Yeah, Zelda Lego.
I'm hoping that that is so true that I'll learn about this within the next month that it's actually true.
All right,
I like things.
Let's talk about The Sims.
Okay, what about them?
We talked about, I think last week, it was either last week or the week before, where there was like new bathroom stuff.
Oh, for
Yeah,
Polar,
like,
they're making avocado toilets.
You could have like more
Clutter
crap
and
in your
stuff.
bathroom.
Good. We're talking about 2 different things.
Yeah. And you
He's
can
just
have
talking about real life toilets.
and you can have MeUndies things.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Underpants. Well, they're adding. There's some more stuff. The most exciting thing they're adding are babies, infants.
I thought they were already babies in Sims.
Well,
So they're.
yeah, I'm
they're-
pretty sure
this
I
is
remember there being
yeah.
babies in Sims.
So this is the infant update. So basically, before babies were effectively a prop associated with a bassinet, like there was a bassinet object, and that bassinet object had a baby object in it that you could
Like-
that could do stuff. But
people have gotten after me for this before, but when babies are first around, they are just potatoes.
Yeah.
They are crying potatoes. They
so
need so much attention.
loud potato.
so what they're doing with this new infant update, they're basically going to make it so babies have are actually like have their own AI,
Kind of
So
autonomous.
They're actually autonomous agents. They can crawl. They can spit up.
so
They
now
can
they're going to
cry.
be a
They
dangerous
can
potato.
escape from cribs.
They will have and they can cry if things happen. And then when they move to being a toddler, which was previously the youngest sort of
Right.
version of a sim that actually acted.
Yeah.
You can like when you design your baby sim, you can set their hair color and skin color and
Yeah.
personality and all that stuff, and that will of course things that have happened to them when they're babies that will
Affect
continue
their-
on as it goes.
Nice.
No,
okay.
now you can ruin them earlier.
This is like, my baby lost an arm.
They can
Also, babies can escape from cribs. I know from personal experience.
Me too.
They
Yeah.
can crawl, spit up, take baths, have tantrums, bite. They can be breastfed. There's breastfeeding
good.
stuff now. There's new animations for like carrying babies and giving giving babies to other people, passing babies around,
Hot potato game. Yeah.
leaving babies outside the front door on your front step, presumably,
I don't like that one as much.
putting babies in other people's mailboxes.
Just thousands of babies in a single house, just all crawling around and getting on top of stuff.
You make fun of that, but you know there's someone who's going to try it and see if
Yeah.
they can do that.
Babies
Absolutely.
can interact with other babies.
Yeah.
Well, that's good. They should interact with one another. One crying potato to another.
And then, of course, there's
Next wave XL of babies.
there's various there's of course various items, cribs and nursery items and toys and things that are also being added in. So that's super cool. That's like a whole new.
Yeah. Is that like when you say that as an update, is that just like an actual update in the base game, or is that you better buy your baby AI if you want them to do things
I think
expansion thing?
I think this is like this thing is calling it the babies update.
That is their concentration.
So I think this is going to be an actual. Is it an expansion pack that you have to actually buy, or is it an update that is just going to happen?
Knowing The Sims, it's like just about every time that a big wrinkle comes along, they always treat it as an expansion pack that you'd have to pay for. But yeah, is it clear in the article? See, DLB, downloadable baby. You wouldn't download a baby.
I'm not entirely sure.
Well,
I mean, I
if
wouldn't
you
be
play
surprised if it's an
If
expansion.
you play The Sims, you'll already know whether this thing is supposed to be a thing you
Or-
pay for or get for free.
Or sometimes they have things where they have like there's sort of like the functionality is put in for free, but then like all the extra stuff is part of an expansion.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it's how they do it. In other things that they're adding to Sims news, because there's a couple of things.
Okay.
They're
Oh, right. I did hear about this one.
so this one is a new. This is a patch, which I believe is just
You'll just
for
get
a
it.
free update.
Yeah, yeah.
One of that is adding something that I saw in the comments to last week's ChillPoint, where we were talking about the clutter stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody was like, "Oh man, yeah, Sims people love their clutter. We're all excited right now about the light switches." And so this is this new patch. One of the things it's adding is you can put more light switches on walls
Yeah.
and like
Can I have
multi-gang light switches.
An
Yes.
entire wall made of light switches.
Yeah.
Maybe,
Can we do
I don't
that
know.
at home?
But also,
Can I make an entire wall at our house just light switches?
Yeah. Why
I
not?
mean that you can do.
That sounds like fun. And different colors.
Nobody can stop you.
They
except
won't
for
do anything.
Except for maybe beach.
They're going to
I
be
guess.
decorative.
No, I understand that.
Except
yeah.
for the one that actually controls the lights in the room.
Yep.
Which will be a different one every day.
Ooh.
But
Our house is
the
about to get interesting.
another thing that they're adding in this update is medical wearables.
Yeah.
So hearing aids, that can be put on any sim, come in 15 different colors, placed in the left and right ear, both ears. Glucose monitors you can put on your sim. They can be on left or right arm or abdomen. You can put on. You have the option to put on body scars as if from top surgery or binders.
Oh, cool.
As part of the customization process on your sim. So they're adding a bunch of stuff just to sort of have more inclusivity and stuff, because they've already done a thing. They already did a thing a while ago where they have more that rather than just sort of binary options between male and female sims.
Right.
There's a more nuanced. I think it's actually just like a customization spectrum.
Right.
And they've added pronouns and all that kind of stuff. So great job. Want to give credit where credit's due on them putting all that stuff in the customization thing. So you can, you can either, have your sim be, either represent yourself or somebody, or you can have them not. You can have them be a totally different type person, but the options are there, which is kind of cool, I think.
Medical werewolves is what everyone heard.
Yeah, to be honest, I also heard werewolf.
This is your werewolf nurse practitioner.
I mean, there are werewolves in Sims.
Yes,
that is a thing. So theoretically, with these with the medical wearables in the werewolves expansion, you could have medical werewolves.
Definitely an achievable option.
Boop.
Werewolves fight Satan. They go down to hell and they steal back all the food that the witches have taken.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
That is a fact.
Mm-hmm.
They do it in different days in different locations so that they're constantly fighting Satan.
Exactly.
This is not a thing we're making up.
No. This has been true since the 1600s.
Okay.
There's a whole court thing about it.
It's amazing.
We were talking about Majora's Mask a little while ago.
Yeah.
But you know who all the cool Zelda people are interested in? A Link to the Past.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
the
that
OG.
That is
Yeah.
not the cool people. That's just the basics.
A Link to the Past, the original asset flip.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I mean, there's been lots of ROM hacks and stuff for Link to the Past. There's been randomizers for years.
Yeah, and the Zelda reverse engineering team has been doing all that work on Ocarina of Time and that kind of stuff. And,
Yeah. And but now, I guess, this is one of these weird things where I kind of thought this was already the case because of like the item randomizers and stuff.
Yeah,
but
yep.
apparently there were aspects of A Link to the Past that hadn't been completely decoded.
Right.
But they now have been.
Right.
So Link to the Past has been completely
disassembled and then turned into human readable code. And is
This
now...
is like when they're like, we've mapped the human genome,
Yes.
kind of stuff.
That's, yeah.
And then you're like, okay, that's cool, but what can you do with that? Well, I'll tell you. They can make it widescreen.
Mm-hmm.
They improve the graphics of the like overworld map.
Right.
They made it so you can have two items selected at once.
Right.
So rather than having to switch so often, because two items at once is a very common thing in later Zelda things.
Yeah.
Zelda games.
Man, it was such a huge deal when Ocarina of Time was like, hey, you can allocate 3 sub-items to your to the C buttons.
Mm.
So you can just have like I can be hitting stuff and whatever, but I can also be using those. It's like that was a big deal.
Yeah. Well, because your joke was very funny, Paul, but you might have been thinking about Link's Awakening, not A Link to the Past.
As the asset flip?
Yeah.
Yes.
But they did that in the remake, didn't they? Because didn't Link's Awakening also have the 2-button, you have to swap out stuff? And then in the remake
So in the original Legend of Zelda, you could always set 2 items. You could always set, you could have sword for one and you could have something for something else, for your second ability, right? But I think Link's Awakening was the first one where like you can actually change out both of those.
Yeah, you didn't have to have a sword.
Because Link's Awakening, you don't start with the sword.
You have feathers and bombs if you want. You could like run around and throw bombs and jump all day. And so yeah, this thing is a PC only port. Am I correct? Like they basically took Link to the Past and said we've compiled this to run on a PC, like emulators on PC, or is it actually running natively on a PC? I'm not sure what the
Yes, I believe this. I'm not sure whether this runs in an emulator on a PC or whether it actually runs. I think it just runs natively. Yeah, it's a native PC port.
And it's fast.
Yeah. I mean, to be fair, we've been able to emulate Super Nintendo on PC.
Yeah.
For a while, yeah. But theoretically, this could, they could make ports now for, and this is, PlayStation or 32X or other cool things.
Can we play the video that compares the two? Because seeing the animation differences, I think, really is also skip those ads. But it really impressed me because I felt like when I've played it originally, I had a certain feeling for what it was like, But when you watch how fast, like on a screen transition, watch the PC side, voom, voom, and the emulating side, that took forever to get from one side to the other. And just there's no sprite slowdown anymore. So if you're like walking through a place that has lots of enemies or has lots of other things going on,
and that thing where like you get to the edge of the screen and it pauses for a sec.
yeah, because it has to load everything in. But see how fast the PC port one it's like, oh yeah, you go into here, boom, you're done. You go in here, boom, boom, you're already through the thing. The text is way faster because they can make the text run over speed they want. Like overall, just I felt like, man, like I never had a problem playing the original game before. But seeing what it's like, I'm like, yeah, that's kind of how I remember it. It felt like it was fast, even though it never was. And that kind of gives you a sense of like the limitations of playing anything on like an old console anyway, right? This is running a 16-bit version of the 6502. They're old machines. They're very retro.
Yeah, I imagine if you play this for a little bit and then go back to the original, you'd be like,
yeah,
why can't this work?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's like anything. If you're gonna play a faster version of something, you have now doomed yourself to never playing the other one again.
And it also means they can fix bugs, because if they notice that like, a thing has been introduced into how the game works, because we have to push through and get it out onto the thing, and hey, it all works, so let's publish it. And given the benefit of hindsight to be like, well, we can fix some of these weird bugs in Link to the Past now that we can actually do it. Let's just do it.
That's what makes old games charming.
But
that's true.
Yeah, speedrunners need those bugs.
Yes.
Yeah, think of the speedrunners.
I was going to do a story on this Link to the Past thing, because I also want to talk about there's a guy on YouTube who has been he's trying to make a new Mario 64 game. I think he's calling it Return to Yoshi's Island or something like that. It's a home game kind of. He's doing it himself. But in the process of figuring out how Mario 64's engine worked, he was like, I can actually save a bunch of time by speeding up this thing and this thing and that thing and that thing, and the next thing you know, Mario 64 runs at 60 frames a second. He's like, I was able to get back, because we knew there were problems with Mario 64 for all these years, but now that I'm actually addressing all these problems, I'm realizing that I can get this thing all the way up to 60 frames a second running native on an N64.
It's one of these things it's annoying because people are fans are figuring this stuff out.
Yeah.
And yet, Nintendo just keeps releasing the same kind of mediocre emulated ports.
And the reason why is it's way cheaper for them to stick a small team on emulating the stuff they've already made and being fine with it than being like, we need you to go back and analyze everything that we screwed up and actually fix it and make it better, and we can release a new version of this. Because to the company, it's like, it's not worth our time because we don't think anyone's going to pay for a better version of that. When it's not that nobody won't, it's maybe just that not enough people will pay for that to make it worth their time.
I mean, if you can make it run at 60 frames a second, wouldn't you make it run at 64 frames a second?
Yes, just for the thing. He's actually, and the guy, is it Kaze Emmanuel? Is that his name? I can't remember. He's actually hard locked it to run at 30, so he has lots of like computational overhead to be doing a lot of other cooler looking stuff.
And I wouldn't be surprised if it's one of those games that things start to go a little wonky when you start running it at 60 frames. Like certain things have like frame count timers on them and stuff.
I think he was trying to take all that stuff into account as well, but yeah, it wouldn't surprise me either. So
and the last story that was sort of mentioned in the post show is about all these live service games getting canceled or being discontinued. Now Graham did mention he sort of bundled them together as like a bunch of mobile games getting canceled, which some of them are not actually mobile games.
Yeah.
Rumbleverse and Crime Site are not mobile games, I don't think.
If not, they're not exclusively mobile if that's the case.
But they are all four of these games, Crime Site, Apex Legends, well, the three games, Crime Site, Apex Legends, and Rumbleverse, have all been released for less than a year.
Mm-hmm.
Battlefield, the mobile Battlefield game, never actually got a release. It came out, people beta tested it, and then it never actually came out. It's just something I was talking to Graham Beach with after the recording. I was thinking about this. Though, like, if you go on, if you've got like say Xbox Game Pass or Ubisoft Play, I think it's called, or these various like
Library.
library subscription services, or if you've got Amazon Prime, for instance, and
Right.
if you have Amazon Prime, you should use your free Twitch subscription, possibly here. But all these library subscription things, they'll have this. They've got all these games that are like games that either were, AAA titles, or maybe they were like, what do you call like a AA title, or like a title that was like it never quite hit that big, those big numbers,
Yeah.
but it's still like well liked.
Yeah.
And some of these games, so these games will like come out at $60, and they'll do fine, but not amazingly.
Like a sleeper hit. kind
Yeah.
of, Yeah.
And then, because these are PC games and not, say, Nintendo games, they'll actually reduce in price over time. And, they might be, they'll start going for like $30, or they'll go on like Steam sale for like $15 or $5 or whatever. They'll start going down. And so a company like Ubisoft or like EA or Activision or whatever has a huge archive, some of which they've developed themselves and some of which they've acquired.
Right.
They've got a bunch of these games. Like if you subscribe to EA Play, you've got like 100 games, or Ubisoft Play has like 50 games.
Because they're like, we're not doing anything with these right now, so
Which is
why
like,
don't you play them?
all the Assassin's Creed games and
Yeah.
all the God of War games, or
Here, you
all
play
this different
this.
stuff. Yeah. All this stuff. And there's this idea that they talk about a lot in especially in the online content world, that like the long tail of content,
Mm-hmm.
right? Obviously here at Loading Ready Run, we have a lot of that.
We have a tail that intermittently disappears and comes back sometimes.
But we've got thousands of videos, and they don't necessarily get a million views each. But every week, there's videos getting views every week, and when you have 20 years worth of videos, that builds up.
Yeah.
And so my point here is that there's all these live service games that are coming out that a lot of people have put a lot of work into. And like there's some very positive stuff about Rumbleverse. People really liked it. The Apex Legends, the mobile one, I guess didn't cook or whatever. But like a ton of people have put a ton of work, and a lot of companies have put a ton of money. But when it's this live service game, that's it.
Yeah.
The game is gone.
Yeah.
When they shut down the server, maybe they can reuse the asset somewhere. But there isn't this thing where like 10 years on, you're still selling the game, maybe for like $5 a copy,
Yeah.
but you're still selling the game.
Yeah.
And it's part of your sort of your archive of games, and you can keep doing it. And I think that in my feeling is that in an effort to chase this kind of live service stuff, to chase the whatever Fortnite, Destiny, the couple of ones that have made it big,
Yeah.
all these live service games that are coming out, it's this really, like, obviously from a consumer standpoint it sucks because you bought this game and it or you're got a bunch of in-app purchases and it's going and the game tanks. But I think even from a like business perspective of these companies, I think it's going to be very short-sighted. Like I think whereas before you put in a bunch of money into a game and it doesn't cook,
Yeah.
you still have that game
Yeah.
and you can still make some money off of it on the discount market.
That's true.
Whereas now, the game comes out, doesn't cook, and that's it.
Yeah. You have to get rid of it.
All the money you spent on that game is completely gone now.
Yeah. And hopefully, like as you say, it's like, can you reuse the assets? Can you reuse the engine? Can you reuse a lot of the other code and like other projects you're working on? There's the capability of that being a thing, right? It's like, oh well, okay, Apex Legends they're going to shut down, but can they reuse some of that networking code or some of the engine stuff to be like, well, we can actually represent, like we can do a new game based on this kind of thing. I agree that I feel like. I agree because I also feel like I'm still part of the past. I'm still part of the thing of I bought a game that was finished, and then I played it on my game console, and I played it and played it and played it either until I was done or until I've gotten sick of it or whatever. That kind of that kind of environment. And I'm like, I've never been part of the live services crew. I've never been part of the people who are like, boy, I really want to pay $15 a month to play this game for 2 years, or maybe only for 6 months until they kill it.
Yo,
So
welcome
it-
to the live services crew.
It's a very different feel, right? Like it's like I agree with you that it's like, yeah, what if they took Apex Legends and said, we're going to make it available on our subscription service, and it's just going to be free for you to play off of there, versus them saying, we're going to take Apex Legends, turn it back into a game that you don't have to be on live services for. We'll have servers set up. It's going to cost you $15 out of pocket to buy it, and you get to play it. And then if a new version comes out, you'll pay another $20. You'll buy that new version of it or something. You know, that kind of like the iOS app model, where it's like you can pay for an app, and at some point they'll release a new version of the app, and then you can buy that one too. And I know people hate that also. Because what people want is, I made a thing, please have it for free and I'll support it forever. And it'll be the best thing you ever had, and you never have to give me any money or give anybody any money ever. We just want to make a thing and let you fucking play it. It's like, that's what everyone wants. And it's like, yeah, I want that too. But I also understand that I need money to live, because we haven't gotten to that
If we
post-scarcity environment
lived
yet.
in a place where we had stuff like
UBI?
yeah,
Yeah. Maybe
that
we'd have
would-
more games that are
we-
like
we'd
that.
maybe get to do some of that.
Yeah.
So you brought up the fact that Nintendo doesn't
lower the price
lower
of
their
their
prices
first party
of games,
titles.
which isn't like, I mean, yes, they don't they still go on sale every now and then, like depending on like Black Fridays and whatever. But that made me think of, so I was reading a forum, and you remember that Ubisoft said our games didn't sell, including Mario and Rabbids Sparks of Hope.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
And
that was in their earning
on
ones.
a forum I was reading, somebody made a thread that said, why didn't you buy Mario Rabbids? And out of all of that, what was going on there, like there were a few people who were like, oh, Ubisoft game.
Yeah.
Well, that was like kind of the bottom reason. The top two reasons that constantly kept coming up in this thread, and I mean, this is like one thread and only a few people who wrote in it, were, I played the first one and I didn't like it, so I'm not going to get the second one, which, fair, valid.
Yep,
Why would you buy the
legitimate, yeah.
sequel? But the other one that kept popping up was, the first one went on sale super cheap after a year, so I'm not buying this until it's gone on sale super cheap.
Yep.
And I kind of feel like if you're constantly making all your stuff go on sale super cheap all the time, you might be torpedoing yourself a little.
Yeah. Because a lot of people are like, there's lots of stuff to play out there, and I can be patient.
I mean, it's an interesting, that's an interesting idea.
I mean, I like you could get the first game constantly for $15.
Yeah. It's, I mean, I think there's arguments for both sides of the thing. You know, there's a subreddit r/patient gamers. That's literally that. It's like, hey, everybody, you know, this game just went on sale, or, you know, or whatever. Is it worth buying?
Yeah.
You know, whatever.
I buy more Nintendo games when they come out, even though I know I'm not going to play them right away, because I know they're probably not going to drop in price, than I do any other kind of title, because I know at some point that thing will probably drop.
Yeah. It's true. It's
Even stuff I'm really excited for.
Yeah, that's an interesting way, interesting sort of perspective on it, that it's like, it ain't gonna get any better.
no.
So buy it now or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's why we get so many live service games as well, is that like part of
Oh yeah, I
being
mean,
able to experience them is you have to experience them in the now.
and people, and obviously, you know, when you get a live service game that does hit, you can really, you know, as Fortnite or whatever has shown, you can definitely milk it.
Yep.
But yeah, it's
Does it?
it is interesting, the you know, because I'm mainly a PC gamer. The mentality is very different, right? It is like, you know, that game looks cool, I'll buy it when it goes on for $10 or whatever. But yeah, with the Nintendo stuff, where it's just like, this is what the game is, this is how much we think it's worth. You know, 5 years on, it's still the same game, still worth that amount of money.
And I mean, chances are good there are going to be a few I don't buy till later, more out of budget. But
Anyway, so that was that's all the news. That is, is there any deal.com or whatever is a good service for that kind of stuff. Like I said, patient gamers. I think there's just like r/game deals is also pretty good.
I use Deku Deals.
Yeah, Deku Deals is awesome.
Because you can set up a wish list, and you can even go in and fine tune it to be like, notify me when this game drops by like 30% or
notify me when only the physical version of this game goes on sale.
Yeah, it's really good if you're really into physical copies.
Is there any game or is there any deal has like all sorts of different game, not just Switch stuff though?
Yeah, Deku Deals does more than that now
They
too.
do PlayStation and Xbox now, and the reason I like them is because they will do Canadian prices when I go on.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, so they'll be watching the Canadian eShops and stuff like that.
Yeah,
they want to reflect it.
Of course, the problem with the sale places,
Yep,
especially like is there any deals, is it'll be like it'll have not only like the price that it's the price that it is when it's not on sale.
right.
It'll have the price that it is now when it's on sale.
Right.
It'll also have the like historic low
Yes.
price. And so there'll be like the graph, there's thing, right? And so you're like, then of course there's the stupid thing where you're like, this game is $60. It's currently $30. That's a really good deal.
Yeah.
But at one point, it was $25.
Yes. I had that happen today, in fact.
Actually, there's been a number
So
of
I'd be
times
stupid to buy it
where
now.
I'll see the game is on sale. I'll go and check, and I'll look at the graph, and I'll see that it goes on sale every couple of months. And because of that, I actually go, oh, this thing goes on sale all the time. I'll pick it up later when I actually have time. That actually stops me from buying games more often.
Or it's like, oh man, that game, I really want that game. I'm going to go get it. And then you go get it and realize that it was on sale like a week ago.
Yeah.
And you missed the sale and you're like, now I don't want it.
Yeah, now I don't want it. This happened with Carto, where I was like, I want to play Carto at some point, but not really in the mood to play games right now, so I'm going to wait until it goes on sale. And it dropped by 10%. I was like, maybe, and I was like, oh, whatever, and it went back up to normal price. And then I watched it drop to like 25% off, and I'm like, oh. And it took a while. It took like months before it actually did like a 20% off or 25% off sale. And I saw it do that and then come off the sale. And I'm like, I didn't really want to play it that bad at that time anyway. But it did it twice more. And on the third time it did it, I'm like, I'm buying it now. I'm trying to play more games. This is 25% off. It matches its previous lows. And I was like, I've seen it go on sale. And in some cases I'll be like, I'll wait till that thing drops to 50% off, right? I'll wait until like a little bit longer. But because they had just like, we kind of locked in at this point, I was like, I'll wait till your next sale. I won't wait for you to drop to like 30 or 40. I'll just wait for like 25, I think is still really good as a discount.
And I know, and I apologize to any people who are in the games industry, game developers or independent publishers or whatever who are watching this and with their heads in their hands and despairing and being like, this is why we can't have nice things.
Yeah.
It's your fault.
Yeah.
And it is. I don't,
No.
I don't pretend to understand the psychology of it.
No.
I disagree.
And
When you
sad.
mold your audience into this is, and I mean, that's not the dev's fault.
Yeah.
That is the company's fault. When you mold your audience into this kind of behavior, it's your fault.
Well, but it's not even just the behavior. It's the sort of consumer behavior, right? The idea that you're more willing to spend $5 on a cup of coffee than $2 on a game on iOS.
Sure. But
it's just a weird
we also have this
psychological
argument
thing.
of like, oh, we have to have the best graphics all the time because that's what sells, and so we always have the best graphics, and whose fault is it that now that we always are constantly demanding better graphics?
Yeah. Like 1080 Paper Mario the Origami King, very cartoony, 1080p, a great fun game, worth every dollar that Heather spent on it. And I'm like,
let's be clear here. Beach doesn't buy games most of the time. I do.
I'm like, I had a great time playing that game. I was really happy with that game. The $70 or $80 that we spent, I'm kind of like, this is good. And I'm like, I had no time on my 4K TV did I feel like I was getting shortchanged. I just felt like I'm having a good time playing this game. you can't do that with everything. You can't say, well, Battlefield's now in cartoons. Like you could. That's Fortnite, but it's like it proves that you don't have to go to the ends of the earth to try to make something as realistic as possible and be like, and that makes the game expensive, and we have to sell $100 million worth of it before we have to do whatever. It's like, maybe you don't.
Historically, Nintendo has always been the master of, making the best out of what they have.
Yeah, which is, let's make a very low spec thing and let's make really fun games for a really low spec piece of hardware. It's like they've done that for decades.
Yeah, and I want to reiterate the thing that I've heard about Nintendo that I love as a saying, which is Nintendo doesn't give you what you want, but you will want what Nintendo gives you.
Yeah, it's weird, right? And I'm not saying
that's not going to be for everything, but
yeah, and I'm not saying it's not great when a company gets out there and really pushes the envelope on what's possible in terms of what you can do on a computer. I think that's really cool too. But we understand that if all we do is concentrate on that and chase that in the industry, that will mean that games will get more expensive. People will be unwilling to buy games as they get more expensive, and we'll start to see people paying less or buying less games and doing that. And it's like, I don't know where you dial that shit in unless you can get companies to be like, we don't care so much about money anymore. We care about making sure we can pay our employees.
They should care about not wanting all the money.
Maybe there's that too.
Maybe they should care about the fact that they have an unsustainable industry that they keep trying to perpetuate forward in the goal of getting all the money.
Technically, yeah.
And now I'm just thinking about a super low angle shot up at Miyamoto, looking down at the camera, and just the caption, "You will like what Nintendo gives you."
Yes.
Anyway, thanks everybody for joining us today on ChillPoint. Check out the episode of Checkpoint on the YouTube channel, youtube.com/LRRVG, our video game channel. And that will also be where you're watching this, probably. So you should go look at that if you haven't for some reason.
Also, patreon.com/loadingreadyrun if you want to support what it is that we do here.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And store.loadingreadyrun.com if you want to check out the merchandise that we make and that we sell.
And I'm also going to shout out the Discord.
Yeah.
Was it discord.gg/LRR?
Correct.
There are several channels, like a forum system almost, that pops up when we get new videos because our mods are awesome.
Yeah.
And from my understanding, some people find out when a new video pops more from that than from their YouTube notifications.
And maybe, hopefully, soon from Twitter.
And
no one's
how
gonna
about leave us a comment that if you were a tower in a tower defense game, what kind of tower would you be?
What kind of tower would you be? Man, that sounds like a personality quiz on
it is.
BuzzFeed, doesn't it?
Yeah. So, thanks everybody for watching, and we will talk to all y'all later.
Bye.
Bye.